I'm Kiera Morgan. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Coffee with Kiera. We are sponsored by The Human Bean in Newport and Lincoln City. And today I am excited to be with State Representative David Gomberg, who's carved out some time in his schedule to come and chat with us as the legislature is underway. Boy, David, thank you.
Great pleasure. You know, we just wrapped up a town hall here in Lincoln City, 100 people. 30 in the room, 70 online, and we're going to be doing these every month. So people had a lot of very thoughtful, provocative questions. It was a really good exchange. But yeah, we're almost in the middle of our legislative session for this year. So we're about a third of the way through. We are looking at proposed changes in state laws. Certainly the most important thing we're doing is building a state budget. And we're doing that in a unique environment because of some of the uncertainty that's coming to us from the federal government, which I think is a big part of what you heard in the town hall over the last hour.
So there's a lot of cuts going on in the federal government that we're seeing, as you mentioned, from NOAA and Hatfield Marine Science Center, Yaquinahead, the BLM. All of this is going to affect our state, and there'll be a trickle down as people, when they lose their jobs, if they can't find equal jobs, they're going to end up leaving. This is going to affect our coastal economy quite a bit. How is the state handling that?
Well, let's start with this. We're writing a 2-year budget right now. The state economist, whose job it is to try and figure out what kind of tax revenue we're going to bring in the next 2 years, they say the state economy is pretty good right now. But just as our revenues are going up, our costs are going up. I mean, your household costs are going up. State government's costs are going up as well as we try to figure out how to pay for schools and health care and mental health care and fighting wildfires and police. All these different kinds of things that we're trying to figure out how to pay for are getting more expensive. And now we've got the situation with the federal government where they are suddenly announcing eliminating grants, eliminating funding projects, eliminating people that we rely on here in Oregon. You know, 1/3 of our state budget comes from the federal government. We're not going to be able to find those billions of dollars somewhere else. And so we're going to have to figure out how to get by without those services. I'll give you an example. Oysters. There's an oyster virus coming up from California, working its way up the Oregon coast. It's going to devastate the Oregon oyster industry. We've got people at Hatfield whose job it is to figure out how to fight those viruses. But guess what? They were fired last week. So we don't have anybody helping us deal with oyster science. And now we're dealing with the cuts at NOAA. I mean, NOAA supports our fishing fleet in a remarkable way. We've got one of the strongest fishing industries in the world right here in Oregon because we got NOAA right here in Oregon telling them what's going on out there in the water and where the fish are and what the conditions are going to be to fish in. So they sustain our fishing fleet, but they also keep our fishermen safe because they tell us what the weather's going to be like at the end of the day. And oh, by the way, they keep you and me safe too, because these are the folks that predicted the wildfires based on the wind and temperature conditions in the summer of 2020.
Not to mention the storm that we just had recently.
They predicted that as well, where trees were falling and power was down. Absolutely. So NOAA is critically important, and yet they are facing dozens of positions being cut, more on the way. That's going to affect it's going to affect our economy in small ways, like, suddenly we don't have those people working and they're not buying things in our local stores or paying local taxes. It's going to affect our economy in big ways because those people are not giving us the information we need to sustain our larger state economy.
Now, I know in the past when there's been issues of cuts or threats that something may go away, and I'm thinking about the helicopter. When the Coast Guard helicopter was in jeopardy of being gone. We have a passion here on the coast to really rally and provide education to those back east that aren't aware of our situations. Is that something that can happen? I mean, can we rally together and provide some education?
When they announced the closure of the Coast Guard Air Station, the Central Coast erupted in a very loud but very effective way. And I anticipate we're going to see the same kind of eruptions in response to the cuts in NOAA and at the Hatfield Center, which are, by the way, two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've got going on right now is Congresswoman Hoyle is on board. Senators Wyden and Merkley, they're on board. They've got to deliver that message to a hostile administration who's not going to be particularly sympathetic to the concerns, excuse me, of the Central Oregon coast. So yeah, we can push back. We can send that message, and I urge everybody to do that. But I don't know how effective it's going to be in this current environment, because I just don't know how much they're listening.
Now, there's lots of bills that are coming before you right now. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yep. The legislative session, boy, I am seeing more proposed bills than ever before. Every bill is a good idea to somebody, but that doesn't mean they're a good idea for Oregon. And we have had nearly more than 4,000 bills have been introduced. I mean, that's enough to make your head explode. 4,000 new pieces of legislation. I want to remind everybody that consistently over the last 5 sessions, we have passed roughly 400 to 500 bills. So only 1 in 10 of the proposals that have been introduced this year are going to make it to the finish line. And there's a lot of good ideas out there. A couple of them might even be mine. But we're working our way through the process, as well as building that state budget that I talked about.
And again, trickle down, more and more people are unhoused. We're trying very hard to provide, shelter, trying to come up with solutions. How are things going in Salem with regards to the housing situation?
Well, homelessness and housing remains at the top of the governor's agenda and the legislative agenda as well. I mean, sure, we got to figure out how to pay for schools and for health care, but I would say those three are, I would add wildfire and say the top 4 issues. And my own role in that has been to work very hard to help pay for more water and sewer infrastructure, because I think it's fundamental to our housing challenge. If you don't have clean water coming out of the tap and dirty water going down the drain, you're not going to have much of a housing, you're not going to have livable housing. And so over in Siletz, 1,100 people that had a $12 million sewer problem. I got them money for their sewer. I got money for Waldport. I got money for Toledo. I got money for Monroe. I got money for Lincoln City. And I got money for Newport, where their dam is one of the most seismically vulnerable dams in the entire state. And they need to replace a dam that's going to cost the city $100 million. I mean, Siletz needs $12 million for 1,100 people, and Newport needs $100 million for 10,000 people. And if that dam goes, we lose the fishing industry and fish processing. We lose the tourism industry. We lose our retirement industry, because people can't live in a community that doesn't have a water supply.
And of course, the challenge is that it's not like costs go down the longer it takes to get things going. No,
those costs keep going up, because originally we were looking for $80 million. Now we're looking for 100. I got them 20 from the state, and then we went back to Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago, got a commitment for another $60 million from the feds.
Now, are those safe?
I want to say yes, but we're waiting to find out. We're waiting for the final approval to come through on the dollars that they promised us.
All right. Anything else? You mentioned education.
Yeah, working for our schools. We've got one of the shortest school years in the country. And that's very disappointing to me. You heard me talk about this in the town hall a little while ago. 172 days. We want summer programs for our kids, but I'd also like to stretch our regular school year further into the summer, so we've got kids in the classroom learning the skills that they're going to need to have a successful future. So those are some of the things that are going on here. We've also got a terrible problem with absenteeism, and about 14% absenteeism. So you combine a short school year with high absenteeism, and the result is that kids aren't getting the education they need. That's going to be an ongoing challenge. The other thing I talked about in response to a question from the school superintendent here in Lincoln County was, what about the effect of wildfires? Your house burns down, the property tax value of that house has burned down as well, and the school district suffers. Families move away because their houses were lost, and the schools don't have as many kids, and they get money based on how many kids they get, and their revenues go down. So I've introduced legislation, I passed legislation to help hold our school district harmless in response to the wildfires, so they got the money they need to continue to educate our kids here.
That's really important. And then another quick thing I want to ask about is there's been information going around social media sure you love it, that the state is looking at a bill to tax or provide fees to homeowners who have wells.
Well, I read it on the internet, so it must be true. Yeah, there are proposals. There have been some proposals that we need to monitor our wells and that we're going to charge well owners in order to do that. I don't see that bill going anywhere. And it wasn't really aimed at homeowners in the first place. It was aimed at the agriculture community in some parts of Oregon that rely on wells and pump a lot more water out of the ground than you or I do for our morning showers. And so, yeah, there's some concerns about how those large industrial wells impact our groundwater, but I don't see anything coming forward that's going to tax you on your family well.
All right. Anything else real quick that you want to?
You want to know what's going on in Salem? Sign up for my weekly newsletter. You have concerns about what's going on in Salem? Send me an email. I read every email, I answer every email, and we get hundreds of them every day, which keeps my 2-member staff really busy. But I want to tell you that Dave Gomberg has his hands on each of those emails as they come through the office, and we want to hear from you. Be engaged with your government, be involved, and because certainly the decision we make there are going to affect you, and I want to make sure we're hearing from you in the process of making increasingly difficult decisions.
And thank you for what you've done in getting money to the coast, the Depot Bay docks, Lincoln City, the park. My grandkids absolutely love the new park in Lincoln City.
Well, we're cutting the ribbon on the docks at Depot Bay tomorrow, and we're breaking ground very soon on the new Welcome Center at the Dee River Wayside. But yeah, I'm very proud of that work. It wasn't easy, but I'm proud of it. I mean, the Cultural Center in Lincoln City, the new park in Lincoln City, the Welcome Center at the beach, the docks in Depot Bay. We got money for the rodeo stands in Philomath, and for the aquarium in Newport. And then we get into things that aren't quite as exciting or sexy, like water and sewer. And having brought home close to $100 million for water and sewer projects up and down the coast, that's going to make a difference in people's lives. Although I'm not sure I want to be remembered as the sewer
the sewer man.
And on that happy note, thanks for spending some time with me today, Kiera.
Thank you. All right. I'm Kiera Morgan. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Coffee with Kiera with State Representative David Gomberg. We're sponsored by The Human Being in Newport at 6th Street and Highway 101, in Lincoln City at the north end of town on the west side by TLC Credit Union.
Thanks so much.